Hello, good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to the News Today edition of 8th of July, wherein we try and simplify all important news of the day, which is important for this examination in the most simplest format to be understood by all of you. So let's look at the important headlines of the day. Recently, government has told that the Kaladan multimodal transport project is going to be implemented by 2027. Recent study by IIT has highlighted the changing nature of floods in India. The Food and Agriculture Organization under the UN has given a report which is talking about youth employment in agri-food systems. Niti Aayog has released a district SDG report talking about localization of sustainable development goals. And there has been a report by PwC talking about the nature of food processing industries in India, which is going to be tech driven. We will also cover place news, which is Sudan. Along with, we are also going to see the quick updates of the day. Now, starting with the first of the day, that is this Kaladan multimodal transport project, which is going to be operational by 2027 as highlighted by the government, right? Very brief, important facts. This report was started, the agreement was signed in the year 2008, right? And it is a strategic infrastructure project between two countries, that is India and Myanmar. Why strategic? Because it is going to bypass the narrow Siliguri or the Chicken Neck corridor which is there, right? And again, it is going to provide a better infrastructure connectivity to the northeast regions of the country, right? Again, led by Ministry of External Affairs of India, right? And it is implemented by Inland Waterways Authority of India. All important facts for your prelims examination. Before this, I'll highlight you through maps that how exactly India's mainland is connected to the northeastern region, right? If you see, there is a very small, narrow passage between the mainland of India and the northeastern region, which is basically called as the Chicken's Neck or what we call as the Siliguri corridor. It is a very narrow stretch of road has a width of approximately 21 kilometers, right? So this is leading to a connectivity issue between the mainland of India with that of northeastern region. How exactly this Kaladan multimodal project is going to help down in terms of connectivity to northeastern region? Let's see. It is going to be connecting two ports. One from India, that is the Kolkata port of India, is going to be connected through sea route to the Sitwe port, which is located in Myanmar. That is the first link. Then again, the Sitwe port is going to be connected through the river Kaladan, right? And it is going to be connected to the Paletwa region, which is again in Myanmar. And through this Paletwa region, we are going to reach the Zorin-Pui border crossing, which is there in Mizoram. So this is how exactly strategically India's mainland is going to be connected to the northeastern region with the help of this particular project. Then what exactly and why are we calling this project as a multimodal project? So by the name meaning of multimodal, multi means there are different modes of transport which we are using in this particular project, right? So number one mode is sea. Again, we have seen that how Kolkata port in India is going to be connected to Sitwe port in Myanmar, right? Again, between India and Myanmar. The second is the inland waterway, that is you're going to use river, right? The second mode of communication is Sitwe port is going to be connected via Kaladan river to the Paletwa region again in Myanmar, right? And lastly, through road connectivity, this Paletwa region is going to be connected to the Indian mainland, that is Zorin-Pui region in Mizoram. This is why this particular project is called as a multimodal project. Again, very important fact for your prelims examination. Now coming down to its strategic importance and why it is important for India. Number one, if you see, northeastern region, it has connectivity issues and it is heavily dependent on this Chicken Neck or the narrow Siliguri corridor. So with this project, India is going to connect the northeastern region with the help of Myanmar, which is again going to be lessening the dependence on this narrow corridor which India is having. In terms of its economic impact, the cost and the time of transportation between the mainland of India, that is Kolkata, to cities like Aizawl, through this project is going to be reduced by 50%. And of course, it is going to boost India's trade, tourism, and investment in the northeastern regions. Then, coming to its global importance, India has launched Act East policy in the year 2014, which is again the idea of connectivity of India's towards the Southeast Asian region. It is going to be a one step in terms of the idea of Act East policy. And lastly, it is going to be strengthening ties with Myanmar, which is going to boost India's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. All of these pointers, wherever necessary, you can put down in terms of India-Myanmar relations, in terms of, let's say, any of your international relation questions in your mains examination, which has something talking about this particular aspects. Now, coming to the next point, there are other important projects which are run by India when it talks about connectivity to the northeastern region. The first project here is India, Myanmar, Thailand Trilateral Highway. Again, the countries which are involved is India, Myanmar, and Thailand. They are connected through the mode of road, right? And the project aim is basically to build highway that connects Manipur to the Thailand area via Myanmar. Again, it is a road project. That is why we call it a trilateral highway. The second is Inland Waterway Protocol with Bangladesh. We have signed again, which is allowing us, both the countries, to use each other's river for transportations and of goods as well as passengers. The BBIN Motor Vehicle Agreement, which is between, BBIN stands for Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. That again, seamless travel of trucks, buses, and private cars to travel across borders without needing to offload goods at each other's border. Again, a seamless movement of goods and services and passengers between these four countries. Lastly, a memorandum of understanding has been signed with Bangladesh, which is going to be connected via road and sea route. It is an agreement that allows India to use Bangladesh, Chattogram, and Mongla ports for transporting goods to the northeastern India. All important connectivity projects with respect to the northeastern region of India in terms of the India's mainland. Again, important for your prelims examination. Now, the next news for the day. Again, all of you must have seen we are experiencing the monsoon season. The nature of monsoon has changed, right? And there are some regions of the country which are experiencing monsoon in an early manner, right? And that is why this report has highlighted, which has been a study conducted by IIT Delhi and IIT Roorkee. This report has highlighted that there is a changing nature of floods which has been occurring in India. In some regions, the intensity of floods and the occurrence of floods has decreased, but in some regions, the intensity and occurrence has increased. In terms of increase, the Himalayan region and the Malabar region, which is there in Kerala, are experiencing an increased intensity and occurrence of floods, which this report has highlighted. Basically, talking about the basic few terms, flood magnitude, that how big that particular flood is, which you must have read in a geography, how big or intense the flood is, that is the volume of water, the amount of risk which is associated with that particular flood. The next term which you must have been seeing is pre-monsoon floods, which is very much visible in the newspapers these days. What are pre-monsoon floods? Because usually floods are associated with monsoon. But with climate change happening across the globe, we are experiencing something what is called as pre-monsoon floods, which are basically floods which are happening before the usual monsoon season. Lastly, the catchment area of a river, right, which is basically the area from where rainwater flows into a river or a dam. These are the few terms which are there in this particular news. Then we talk about where the floods nature are decreasing, as this report has highlighted that in some areas the intensity and occurrence of floods has decreased. What are those areas? Number one, the Ganga basin, it talks about, which is covering the UP and Bihar region. The floods have reduced by 17% over a decade. Reasons: less rain happening in this region and the soil moisture. Now, my question to you, how do you think low soil moisture is associated with, again, less occurrence of rain? Logically, if soil has less moisture, its holding capacity is going to increase, and of course, the flood occurrence is going to decrease. Right? That is how you're going to interlink the geographical facts with the news, whatever you're reading. Then in across these rivers in these regions, there are dams which are being constructed, which is allowing or controlling the water flow into the regions, and again stopping the occurrence or the intensity of floods happening on these regions. We talk about the Narmada Basin, which is associated in Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. Floods are declining due to the dam construction. This report has highlighted. When we talk about the Marathwada, that is Deccan Plateau, the river flowing has reduced by 8%, again due to the less onset of monsoon on those regions. And again, 31% drop up in the pre-monsoon season, which is linked to the idea of droughts, sukha. But we have seen that again, why there have been farmer suicide associated in these regions, right? That is how you to interlink things. Then we talk about where are these incidents of floods increasing. As I discussed, it is the Himalayan region and the Malabar coast region, right? So in the Himalayan region, that is the northwestern Himalayan areas of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, flash floods are coming earlier, because this year what we have seen, monsoon which was supposed to reach the region by July, it has reached in June, right? And that has led to a problem of what we call as flash floods. What are flash floods? They are kind of floods where again the area is not ready to hold that amount of water at that point of time, which is leading to the idea of what we call as flash floods, which is happening. And again, you must have seen news of flash floods happening in the Himachal Pradesh and the Uttarakhand region, which has taken a lot of life and property. Then we talk about, again, this is linked to what we call as climate change, melting of glaciers due to the global warming, and the idea of pre-monsoons. Then across the Malabar coast, that is the Kerala region, there has been an 8% increase per decade when you talk about the intensity of floods, which has been leading due to what? The stronger pre-monsoon rain, again leading to this, right? And it is a problem in this region. Why? Because it is going to be happening across the time what we call as a crop harvesting time, which is leading to the crop failure or damages. Then we talk about the small rivers or the small catchment. I basically talk about the catchment is what? The area or where the river is storing the water. The report has highlighted that the small catchments or the small rivers are associated with big risk of floods happening. Why? Because across all the major big rivers, there has been construction of dams. With this dam construction, the amount of water is controlled, and which is leading to less occurrence of flood across those major rivers. But once we talk about the small rivers, which have a small catchment area, again under 100,000 square kilometers, the floods are increasing due to these regions. That is quick rainfall response, no storage buffer, like it does not have wetlands which can absorb the excess amount of water, and again the incidences of flood can be reduced. And also the problem of what we call as urbanization, because what we call as soil is being replaced by the cemented areas, which is leading to more occurrence of what we call as urban floods, or that is how it is. Again, flash floods are happening, which is due to where again rain has nowhere to go, right? And it is just rushing down fast, and floods are happening in that area, which is basically called as flash floods. Just to show you, one question I would like to ask you. Why do you think flash floods in Himalayan regions are very dangerous? The geographical region and the geography of that particular area, which has what we call as very steep slopes. Steep slopes along with this heavy rains which are occurring is leading to what we call as sudden disasters like landslides, right? And once we talk about the Malabar region, how can floods during the harvest season in Kerala affect the farmers? We have seen that again, crop damage just before the harvest is again going to take the economic toll when we talk about the agricultural or the farmers which are in that particular region. An example of flash flood, which has happened very recently, 148 deaths have been associated in the Himachal and Uttarakhand region in the June-July month of this particular year, right? Where again, flash floods are happening. And again, the current flood warning system aren't prepared for this shift in timing, because what we have seen, our response to the flood and the response system, what we have is not updated with the changing nature of floods happening in the country. And that is why this report is very important to prepare us, to change us, or to rationalize the whole preparedness when we talk about the flood management system in the country. So this report has highlighted that why this study is mattering for us. Number one, the flood risk planning must change, because this report has told that changing nature and intensity of flood happening in the country. So with this changing nature, the planning of flood managements need to be changed. That this report has highlighted, right? So the early floods in the Himalayan regions are stronger. Floods are happening in Kerala. Smaller floods are not filling the dam. So these are the few changes which this report has highlighted, which has to be incorporated in the risk planning system of the floods. Then in terms of crops, power generation, water supply, all depend on timing and size of these floods. Because as I said, this report has also told in some areas the intensity and occurrence of floods is reducing, which is again leading to a situation of sometimes drought, right? So again, say a coin having two sides. Then in terms of misjudging flood patterns, because this report has highlighted that if we must misjudge the whole pattern or the changing nature of floods happening in the country, it is going to take a toll on the economic as well as the environmental losses which are associated to the disaster of what we call as flood. What do we need? And what we need as of now is a better weather forecasting system, smart urban and rural planning, flood warning systems that reflect these new realities which we have discussed or the report has highlighted, and lastly, water management that adapts to the nature of climate change happening at a global level. So this was all about flood. Basically, we need to be preparing our risk or the flood management system with the changing nature of floods which has been happening in the country. Right? In any area of your disaster management or geography, when we talk about flood, you can use these data as per the requirement of the question. Now, I would like you to comment on these three questions under the comment section. Number one, what do you think? Should flood early warning systems be updated based on the changing timing of floods happening in the country? Number one, what do you think? Can floods ever be of helpful nature? And lastly, how does climate change make floods more unpredictable in nature? So these three questions, please suggest your point of view on all of these three issues under the comment section of this particular video. The next news for the day, the United Nations body that is Food and Agricultural Organization has recently released a report which is talking about the status of youth in agri-food systems in India. What we have seen at a global level, youth unemployment, or technically unemployment is here, but once we come down to the section of youth unemployment is on a rising trend. And we have also seen the agricultural sector, not just in our country, but across the globe, is not performing and not being working in an efficient manner. So both these areas are facing problem. Why this report has told that again, why don't you link these two problems, which is going to be a mutually solution for all these two sectors. If we are going to improve the agriculture sector, we require people to be working in that particular sector. Youth are unemployed across the globe. Right? So if these two problems are handled hand by hand, there again, it is going to be a win-win situation that this report has actually highlighted. Let's look at some data which this report has talked about. Once we talk about youth unemployment status, 20% of the global youth, and again, global by age group means the age group of 15 to 24 years, are not in employment, education, or training that we call as need. Right? This is one data you can use in your questions of unemployment or any other matter with respect to that. Now it comes to youth in the agricultural sector. This report has told that there has been a decline participation of youth in the agricultural sector, which has declined from 54% in 2005 to 44% in the year 2025. Then rural youth decline, right? Because nowadays, as you have seen, people are migrating, right, for better opportunities. And this report has again showcased that fact, that again, how youth are now living in urban areas due to the better opportunities and shortcomings of the agricultural sector. Lastly, food insecurity across the globe is rising, right? So this report has highlighted a fact that the youth food insecurity has been on a rising trend from 16.7% to 24%, specifically in the African region, right? So these are the few facts which has been highlighted in this particular report. How you can use these facts? You can use this to substantiate any point with respect to any of these topics whenever you're writing in your main answers. Then, what does this Organization of Food and Agriculture Organization has suggested for this particular problem? It has told, कि let's look agricultural and food systems, what they can provide millions of jobs and again boosting the global economy, right? That is why two things, two problems to be linked together for a solution, right? Now, there's a report has talked about agri-food. So what do we understand by agri-food systems? Agri-food systems are basically everything, starting from growing of crops to raising animals, processing the food, packaging, selling, and even the food delivery. So a one chain that is from farm to your fork. That is the basic idea of this agri-food systems. It is a full cycle of a complete cycle of in the agricultural particular sector. Now, what if youth are employed in agriculture? This report has also told the outcome that if we are interlinking these two problems for a solution, what kind of outcome this is going to be coming forward. Global GDP is going to be increased by 1.4%. Jobs are going to be created in the farming sector by in millions of numbers, which is going to solve the problem of youth unemployment. Lastly, there is going to be a 45% of GDP rise from this agri-food industries altogether. So this is how the report has not only showcased the problem, but also has projected that if we are employing youth in the agri-food sector, how it is going to be economically beneficial for and a win-win situation for both the problems. Then, what are the challenges? Because what we have seen when we talk about youth participation in agriculture, there has been some challenges. Let's see what this report has talked about. Number one, the social status, because what is perceived generally across the economy that agricultural sector is something aligning with, as it is not somewhere like IT or a big job, right? So they are seen as a low status work. That is again a problem associated with this agricultural sector, which is making it unattractive for educated youth in the country, right? Number two, climate change. Climate change is happening, which is again leading to unpredictable nature of the changing nature of situations happening. We discuss about the changing nature of floods in the country, which is making this whole climate change issue again leading to what we call as unpredictable weather and climate risk, which makes this farming seem more insecure and risky, right? Then there is a very skewed internal migration. When we talk about marginalized groups, STs, SCs, or youth, they are overrepresented in seasonal migration, limiting stable farm opportunities, right? They are migrating more based on need and demand, not permanently associated with that particular activity. Then in terms of women equality, again, some social factors, this also has highlighted that the young women are usually giving up the inherited land to their counter male relatives, right? And this is leading to their reducing access to the farming sector. Lastly, the landlessness nature, because many a youth does not own any land. If they're not owning any land, it is leading to they are working in the rented plots, and which is limiting their investment and stability as a job for that particular instance. So these are the few challenges which this report has highlighted of youth participation in the agricultural sector. Then, what exactly has this organization talked about how we can solve this problem? So there is a solution also which has been discussed here, right? We need to make farming attractive of nature, right? How we can do that? By incorporating the use of technology. You have a syllabus, e-technology in the aid of farmers. The use of tech like drones, apps, agri startups. We talk about Dehat is a startup, which is again talking about a youth startup in the agricultural sector, which is an example of how youth are incorporating in the agricultural sector of the economy. We need to adapt ourselves to the changing nature of climate change. How we can do that? We are going to train the youth in terms of climate resilient farming systems, in terms of creating a decent job. As I discussed, people are not seeing this job as a good social status, right? So that perceptions need to be changed, wherein we're going to improve the wages, we are going to improve the working conditions and some social benefits which are associated with this particular job also. Lastly, we are going to improve the food systems. That again, we talk about the idea of food insecurity happening across the region, specifically in the African region, which is going to how we are going to let the youth lead in the ideas of food innovation. And again, example of Dehat as a agri startup, which has been started by India, which is a youth-based startup example, right? So these are the few action programs, what has to be done, right? So again, if we are going to lead forward, if we are going to, in India, from India's perspective, if we are seeing that again, 50%, approximately 50% of the population of the country is employed in the agriculture sector, which is only contributing 16% to the India's GDP. Right? So if we want that again, the share of GDP through this agricultural employment is going to be increased, we are going to certainly work on all of these parameters. Very important report. You can quote in any question talking about agriculture, or maybe a pointer, maybe when we talk about unemployment status, ways to curtail the problem of unemployment, these report can be used. The next news of the day, Niti Aayog has recently released an index, that is Northeastern Region District Sustainable Development Goal Index. So again, as I discussed, that we have discussed many times regarding the 17 sustainable development goals. So all of these goals are at global level. What do I know if I want to see that how a village is in Mizoram is progressing towards this sustainable development goal, or a district in Tripura is successing or is moving towards attaining the idea of the sustainable development goal? So this problem has been highlighted, and this is where this Niti Aayog has released a district-wise index which is going to map the progress, that how exactly in these northeastern regions, district-wise, how they are contributing to the idea of these 17 sustainable development goals which are being developed, right? Which are developed. So again, this Niti Aayog has released a district sustainable development index of 23 and 24 for the northeastern region to measure how well each district is doing in achieving the sustainable development goals. Like again, all the 17 goals, that has to be by heart but by you, because that is very important. And it is again, all 17 goals are again 17 topics of our syllabus of the examination. Now, in terms of this, the index or the report which has been released, Nathial, again a district in Mizoram, is the top performer, right? Again, the districts which are front runners are Mizoram, Sikkim, Tripura are ranked as the front runners. Whom do we call as front runners? State or districts which are high achieving in terms of all of the 17 sustainable development goals indicator parameters. Then we came with a concept of localizing these SDG. How you can understand, how you can interlink with an example. Let's say we think this Indian cricket team as a localization of SDGs, right? So in the Indian cricket team, how a team is going to perform well is going to be determined by how each of the players in the team are performing in the respective parameters. In a similar manner, if we are going to measure that how exactly India as a country is performing towards achieving the targets of these sustainable development goals, we need to track that how each and every district of the country is performing on achieving the target which has been set up under the sustainable development goals. That is why this idea of localization of sustainable development index, right? So why and what does it mean? Number one, it is going to the real change is actually happening at a local level. We have seen that again with the idea of democratic decentralization, all of things. Village and districts are where exactly education, health, roads are delivered, right? So why not to track process or track the progress from the very base level, right? Then the bottom up approach, we have seen the governance chapter that how government is going to not work from a top down approach, and we need to shift towards the bottom up approach, where again the approach needs to start from the district level, then again state, and at the national level. That is the whole idea of what we call as democratic decentralization process in the governance system. It is also going to lead us to the better monitoring of these sustainable development goals. An example, where again Mizoram is an example, which is the village committee is tracking the progress of these sustainable development goals. Lastly, it is going to reduce the idea of inequality happening in society, where again, which is going to help down poor districts catch up to the national average once we talk about these 17 sustainable development goals. Then, what are the challenges which are associated with localizing these sustainable development goals? Number one, a simple and the most important challenge which these local bodies in India is facing, the problem of funds, right? So financial pressure, because local budgets are very tight in nature, and at that tight budget, how you are expecting that money is going to be spent in achieving these SDG targets instead of spending on health, education, more of that, right? That is a major challenge. Secondly, how we are going to balance the idea of growth and environment. You must have seen in the environmental ethics there's a problem of growth and again development, right? And keeping in mind the environment. That is why we have came with the idea of sustainable development goal, right? But many times we have seen that it becomes very difficult to grow the economy and still be eco-friendly at the very local level. That is one second challenge. Lastly, in terms of data, right? So many local areas lack accurate or recent data, which is again hindering in terms of making smart plans in achieving these sustainable development goals. So all of these challenges which are being highlighted or which are there in terms of localizations of sustainable development goals in India. There are a few other how we can fix these challenges. Number one, very, very obvious. Again, all of these are solutions which you can quote in your answers directly. Strengthening of local governments, use of innovative financing lies like what we call as sustainable development gold bonds. If we are facing a problem of fund, why are not releasing these kind of bonds, which is going to give some autonomy in terms of finance, in terms of attaining the goal of sustainable development. Promoting of digital data platforms at the very panchayat level, so that the data or data issue which you are facing can be solved. And lastly, again, the whole idea of public-private partnership model of working to achieve this whole idea of sustainable development. Lastly, in terms of India's effort, it is not just only one effort which has been highlighted by this Niti Aayog report. India is also working at different other platforms and ways in achieving the idea of localizations of the sustainable development goals. Number one is this report of Niti Aayog, which is making a SDG India index, again promoting the idea of what we call as federal cooperation. Schemes like Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Panchayat Advancement Index, it is all tracking progress of India towards these sustainable development goals. There are some examples like the Assam's example of Chief Minister's Samagra Gramya Unnayan Yojana, which is aligning with the local goals with the national vision. So all of these are the ideas where again, it is as simple as that. Again, if we want to empower, if we want to achieve, right, the change should start from the very bottom level that this index is basically highlighting. The next news of the day, recently the PricewaterhouseCoopers a company and the Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India has recently released a report which is talking about the next gen technologies for a progressive food processing sector. So again, all of you must have very important topic for the examination. Why? Because food processing industries is a subtopic of your syllabus of GS paper number 3. What exactly this report has highlighted? Again, industrial revolution, industry 4.0, because we have seen industrial revolution has happened. Now the new 4.0 version of this industrial revolution is that, again, with the changing or emerging technologies which we are experiencing in the economy, how they are going to revolutionize the whole process. And specifically this report has highlighted about that, how exactly these technologies is going to improve the food processing sectors of the world and India specifically. Example is the using of smart tech like artificial intelligence, robotics, data analytics, blockchain technology to make industries faster, safer, and more efficient in nature, right? That is how it has been highlighted. One thing I would like to showcase you, if you talk about the volume of food wastage which is happening at a global level is very high, right? And that has led to this idea that how effectively we are going to incorporate integration of technology so that, again, the food wastage which is happening across the sector is not going to happen. What exactly are these food processing industries? Right? You drink a juice in a Tetra Pak, example of food processing industry, right? As simple as that. Let's see what are the problems which are faced by the food processing industries in India. Number one is wastage of food. At a global level, if we have seen, 936 million worth of food is wasted every year at a global level, which this report has highlighted. Then in terms of illness which are associated with consuming these maybe less amount of food, or what we call as foodborne illness, it has increased, or it is leading to what we call as 110 billion loss annually by consuming of unsafe or contaminated food. Then there is a supply chain gaps which is happening. India is losing approximately 1.53 lakh crores worth of food during the post-harvest losses due to the not well functioning of these food processing industries. And lastly, high operational costs. All of these food processing industries are operating at a very high cost, which is leading to a lot of loss of energy and water, again taking a toll on the environment. Then what exactly and how Industry 4.0 is going to is providing smart tech solution to the problems what we have discussed. Number one, integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is going to automate the sorting process in the whole food packaging system. It is going to detect the spoiled food without touching it. Again, all of the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning. With the help of blockchain technology, which is going to track the food journey from farm to fork, which is ensuring transparency in the food delivery system. Smart processing, that again, we are not just going to process food, but we are going to process the food in a smarter manner, because what we have seen, the changing nature of lifestyle happening across the globe, people are more dependent on these processed foods. So again, they need to live, or they need to have a longer shelf life. And that is why we talk about the idea of smart processing, which is going to boost the shelf life and nutrition of food, right? Example are vacuum drying, cold plasma technology, right? And lastly, use data analytics in terms of predicting the demand, right? Managing the waste, right? And managing the inventory in a better manner. This report has highlighted that how exactly Industrial Revolution 4.0 is going to help with an idea of food processing industries. Then why exactly it is very urgent as of now? World population is going to hit 9.8 billion by 2050. If we are not working towards the idea of food security, that again, how we are going to cater this huge population increase, which is going to be there by 2050. We need to have an efficient, sustainable food systems to feed everyone, right? And lastly, people want longer lasting, healthy and ready to eat foods. That is why we need to maybe integrate technology in these food processing sectors of the country. Then, what are the challenges which are associated in adoptions of these technology? Number one, again, these new tech-based food processing are quite higher in cost, and again, people fear of technology. Where government incentives need to be provided, private investment need to be done, which is a solution for the problem. The second issue is of regulatory barriers, because again solution is we are going to have data laws like DPDP Act of 2023, which is going to be talking about the data safety and privacy. Lastly, people are lacking skills in terms of incorporation of these new tech in terms of their skill, where again skilling programs for food tech workforce need to be incorporated, right? Now, next, India's food processing sector. Let's see, because as this is a very specific topic of a syllabus, let's see where does India's processing sector stands. In terms of growth rate, it is growing at a rate of 5.35% annually, right? In terms of processed foods export share, has contributed 23.4% to the total agri-food exports, which has happened in the year 23 to 24. And lastly, in terms of government support, PM Kisan Sampada Yojana, production-linked incentive scheme for food processing industries. These are the few facts which are very important as far as food processing sector of India is concerned. Now, the place in news section. So, recently, the United Nations had warned the worsening crisis which is happening in the El Fasher region of the Sudan, right? So, very important, again, the region where again Sudan, you need to know about the neighboring countries, important sea passing through it, the capital city, again, the third largest city of Africa, right, or the country in Africa. It is the bordering states or the bordering countries, Libya, Chad, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Egypt, right, or the bordering countries. Coastline, again, the coastline is of Red Sea, very important in terms of geographical features. Nile River is draining most part of the country. The highest peak is Mara Mountains, and the important resources which are found in Sudan is petroleum, gold, iron ore, copper, zinc, and mica. Again, very important. This is how you're going to cover all important geographical locations in news, which is going to help you to prepare for the next year's examination. Now, switching to the quick updates for the day. The first news is Enemy Properties Act of 1968. Recently, Madhya Pradesh High Court has refused to take Bollywood actors' petition on this declaring of a property in Madhya Pradesh as an enemy alien property. That is why this whole topic is in news, right? So what exactly this act talks about? This act was basically made that again, all the properties which are held by people from Pakistan and China region, specifically after the wars of 1947, 62, 65, and 71, it will be owned, it will be taken up by the Indian government under this particular Enemy Property Act of 1968. There has been an amendment in the year 2017 to the act, which talks about all the natural heirs of that particular property, they cannot claim that property at all. Right, that was the whole basis of quashing of the claim which was there by this particular Bollywood actor in terms of a property in Madhya Pradesh. What exactly and why this law was being made? Because we have seen that India has led war in terms of Pakistan and China, and some people from these countries had land, houses, and businesses in India, right? So to stop that property from being misused, the government has passed this act in the year 1968. What exactly do we mean by an enemy property? A person who left India and became a citizen of Pakistan or China, those property which are held by these people will be called as an enemy property. Their legal heirs, even they now live in India, cannot claim over that particular property, right? And any firm or a company run by such people, they will also come under the category of enemy property, right? So these properties are taken over and managed by the custodian of enemy property under Ministry of Home Affairs. Very important. Again, this is how some important piece of legislation comes back in the news, and that become a form of a question in the examination. The next news for the day, Red Sea was in news because the whole idea of the disturbance which is going on the West Asia region, this was in news because Yemen's Houthi rebels has recently claimed that again they have sank a Greek operated cargo ship, which was called as a Magic Sea ship in the Red Sea region. So again, there has some disturbance going on in that particular region. But again, this Red Sea is very important from examination perspective. Why? Because it is connecting, because if you see the map, it is connecting Gulf of Aden, right? And the Bab-el Mandab Strait in the Mediterranean region. And again, if we talk about the borders of the Red Sea, it is in the western side, it has been bordered by Egypt, Sudan, and Eritrea. In the eastern side, it is being bordered by Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and in the northeastern region by Israel and Jordan. Again, all the neighboring countries and all the countries surrounded by the Red Sea are very important because UPSC has been asking questions in order also. You need to arrange from north to south, east to west, all of those parameters, right? And then we talk about the northern split. These sea splits at two fronts. One is Gulf of Suez and one is Gulf of Aqaba, which is there connecting in the Jordan region, right? Again, in terms of some geographical properties, right? The water in that Red Sea is very saline in nature, right? And there is no major inflow of river in that particular Red Sea, which is, and it is also not receiving any amount of rainfall, very minimum rainfall in that particular sea. These are a few important facts. Go and locate your Red Sea in your respective maps on all of these parameters. Okay, now the next news for the day. So many times you must have seen in newspapers that again joint military exercises between India and the country is in news, right? And these are some defense favorite area questions of UPSC in prelims examination. Why? Maybe they give you the name of that exercise and they ask you between which two countries this particular military exercise is being conducted. So recently, Jai Mata is an Indian Coast Guard exercise which has been recently coming into picture. Few facts. Again, Jai Mata, again the Japanese word of see you later, right? So again, important. The participants include Indian Coast Guard and the Japanese Coast Guard. Objective is to enhance operational readiness, refine the combat coordination, and strengthen the interoperability for joint maritime missions. Again, basic facts important for your prelims examination. The next news for the day, the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization has recently told that again, whenever we are disposing these 17 identified drugs, we need to dispose in a most careful manner because these 17 drugs are very harmful when we talk about humans and pets, because many times the unsafety or maybe not safety based disposal of these particular drugs lead to contamination, and again it is affecting humans as well as pets, right? So basically about the organization, again it is coming under the Central Drug Authority, is coming under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Again prelims point, right? What functions does it have? It is constituted under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940. Again, very important fact for prelims. Why I'm telling this is because many times these are the factual nature of questions which are actually asked in examination. This is where you need to be very much clear based on the changing nature of examination questions. We need to adapt to the changing nature, right? Functions, it approves the new drugs, it oversees the clinical trials of drugs, it is controlling import of drugs, it can ban harmful drugs in the country, and it is holding key meetings with respect to a consultation and advisory of that particular drug in the country, right? Now, the next news for the day, maize importance was highlighted in the India's Maize Summit of 2025. Again, important crop, important fact for prelims examination, right? So, maize is basically also called as the queen of the cereals, right? So, again, what kind of crop it is? Kharif crop, which are being, Kharif means, again, summer season crops, which are used as food and fodder as well. It is also known as queens of cereals, which has a highest genetic yield potential. In terms of growing conditions, important for your geography, the soil should be well drained, sandy, loamy soil. Again, all the old alluvial soil with a pH of 5.5 to 7.5. The ideal temperature is 21 degrees to 27 degrees. So again, this is, you're going to highlight that which regions are in India which has a geographical potential for maize. Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh, right? In terms of world, USA, Brazil, China, Russia, Canada, and Mexico have these ideal conditions for growing maize. The next news for the day, all of you have your own passports, which is again your identity card. So government has, or the Niti Aayog has recently proposed an initiative that again, why not to give a unique identity to each battery? And through this, we are going to efficiently and effectively manage the batteries which are operating in this across all the battery operating industries in the India, right? So Niti Aayog is in talk to develop battery passport framework, which is again, it is inspired by European Union's battery regulation of 2023, right? What exactly it is, just like Aadhaar for batteries, which is having it is going to give a unique digital ID or a QR code to each battery, which contains information about where the battery was manufactured, what is its composition in terms of performance, in terms of its recycling status, right? Why it matters? Because we have seen in India, it is going to boost safety and quality of standards. It is going to support the electric vehicle exports from India, and also it is promoting transparent and circular battery chain system, and also the whole idea of e-waste generation and the idea of reusing or sustainable use of these batteries. Again, this is where it can help down in terms of better processing of batteries in the country. The next news for the day, Guadalpur River was in news many times. This recent flood was there in Texas, which and a video was floating around the social media platforms, right? So that is why this was in news. Again, an example of flash flood happening in an area, right? So it because it was triggered by a heavy rainfall and it has caused a massive damage specifically in that river region. So basic features about this river, it is a spring-fed river starting from Kerr County in the Texas region. It is flowing to San Antonio Bay in Gulf of Mexico. Few features, it includes Cannon Reserve and Edwards Aquifer, right? It is located in flash flood alley, which is prone to sudden flooding due to steep terrain, high rainfall, and shallow soil. Again, basic geographical facts, how you're going, whatever facts and concepts you're reading in physical geography, you are actually seeing through examples over this set of news, because many times we see it because there are no news of geography. An example at how you are going to reflect upon the concepts what you have learned in geography along in this particular news. Now the next news for the day, the Jal Jeevan mission was in news. Why? Because the challenge which this mission is facing is of funding, and that is why, which is a major roadblock in this particular initiative. Whenever a government scheme comes in the news, right, it becomes important that again it could be asked in the prelims examination, right, or a main related question could be asked around that particular scheme. So in terms of prelims, you need to know about the basic facts. What are basic facts? When what exactly is launched? So understand this very important fact. The scheme was launched in 2019, and you might get surprised that again, sir, we are going to read only important schemes which are launched in last 1 year. But sir, this news was in news, right? And that is why it makes important to be asked in the examination, right? Which ministry? Ministry of Jal Shakti. Objective to provide functional household tap connections to the rural households. That is a basic idea. Centrally sponsored scheme which has been extended till 28. Focus is on safe and adequate drinking water. Again, states are going to handle the planning and implementation of the scheme, and the central government is going to support with funds and technical aid. And the current challenge is of funding, facing funding roadblocks, which is impacting the progress of this Jal Jeevan mission. Now we come to an end to this News Today edition. Now all important prelims based questions which could be framed from this particular session would be popping up in your screen. It is very important that you solve these questions, because how we are going to track our performance or track our understanding that what nature of questions could be framed from these set of news, and whether I have understood the news in a way, and whether I'm able to solve such questions which can be framed from prelims perspective. So again, please solve and please post your answers in the comment section so that again you can get a competitive idea again how have you solved and how others have solved. So again, very best way to track your performance after reading a particular news. Lastly, Visionize has come up with a digital current affairs platform, where again which is going to be a one-stop solution for all your problems with respect to current affairs, which is going to be a very much tech-driven or innovative website which has been designed, which is tackling all important issues with respect to usage of resources, handling of resources, again how exam-oriented focus with respect to current affairs. All of these things have been incorporated in this particular website. Go and explore this digital current affairs platform of Visionize. Thank you, all the very best, and have a good night.